Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to the Establish the Run first look show for week 15. We have done it. Congratulations, everybody. We are out of the fantasy regular season for pretty much all formats that exist. Congratulations to all of you that have advanced to your season-long playoff leagues, to the championship rounds on something like a main event, to your best ball playoffs, whatever it may be. But if you have not advanced, if your seasons are sadly over, fear not, because DFS rolls right along. I am Gary Hartman here with you to break down a first look, gut reaction, rapid fire style at the week 15 main slate on DraftKings. Main slate meaning Sunday only. So let's set the table for what this upcoming week looks like. We do only have an 11 game main slate again, or is it 10? This is saying 10. Maybe it's 10. 10 game main slate again, and that is because when we get down to these mid-December games, when college football is done, or we're just waiting for the college football playoff, the NFL spreads out their schedule. We have Saturday games coming up starting this weekend. So Thursday night off this slate, we have the Chargers and Raiders. Not very consequential for fantasy purposes with the current state of those teams. Perhaps no Justin Herbert for the Chargers. Saturday, three header, kind of like Thanksgiving style. We have a 1 o'clock, a 4 o'clock, and an 8 o'clock. 1 o'clock, Vikings, Bengals. So no Vikings or Bengals on this main slate. 4 o'clock, Steelers, Colts, 4:30 game. So no Michael Pittman to throw into your player pool. No Deontay Johnson, etc. And then 8:15, Denver Broncos at Detroit Lions. Probably the most consequential of these first 4 games from a fantasy perspective, with the Lions there, but that is on Saturday night. Sunday night off the main slate is Ravens, Jaguars. Should be a fun one there. And then Monday night, rounding out week 15, is Eagles, Seahawks. So that's a pretty big one too from a fantasy perspective. That's all to say that we do have 10 games on this main slate. And, once again, a bunch of low over unders here. There are some late games that give us hope for environment wise, a couple that are floating right around 50. We don't have anything at or above the 50 point total, but we do have 3 games, all 3 4 o'clock games that are 48, 49, and 49. So the Cardinals 49ers, that is a 48 over under. The Commanders Rams, that is a 49, and the Bills Cowboys, probably the game of the week, that is a 49 as well. So it's definitely possible that things are really heavily tilted towards that 4 o'clock window this week. So attacking those 7 early games could be both unique but risky as well, because there's just the Bucks Packers. That's a 42. I think that is a 1 o'clock game there in Green Bay. That's a 42. And then everything else is like mid 30s, well below 40. So something to consider here. I think the Jets Dolphins may be 39 in Miami, but everything's really like 35, 36, 37. So something to consider for sure, that it is not the prettiest week on the early games, but those late games have decent game environments. Getting into team totals here, mentioned those late games. The 49ers going into Arizona, which has been kind of a fantasy gold mine all year, they have that magical 30.5 implied team total. Anytime I see a team total above 30 points, I take that very seriously. You should too. The Niners obviously have been on an absolute roll, probably the best overall team in the league, if I do say so myself. So going into Arizona in division, they should have no problem putting up points there. You jump down 3 points to your next highest team total, and that is the Los Angeles Rams at home hosting the Washington Commanders. Commanders, if the Cardinals haven't been the best fantasy team to attack all year, it's definitely been the Washington Commanders. So the Rams 27.5, certainly a good spot to attack there. And then those aforementioned Dolphins are at 26. The Bills 25.5. The Chiefs, who have a tough spot going into New England, are at 23.25. Cowboys at 23 going into Buffalo. Packers at 22.5. And then we start getting into the low 20. So some interesting individual teams to attack game environments as a whole, mostly those 3 late games. But let's dive in. Again, we go rapid fire style here, position by position, just starting to transition our minds from last week to this week. What type of constructions, plays, matchups stand out? So let's start at the top at quarterback here. Josh Allen at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, no doubt Dallas has been a good defense, but the Bills really have been the best offense in the league even post Ken Dorsey. Obviously, impressive win going into Kansas City. They've had two really tough road games back to back, KC, Philly. Their schedule does not get any easier playing the Cowboys, which are probably a top 3 team in the league, but at least they go home. The Cowboys are going to be able to put up points. There's definitely a chance this game goes back and forth. You mentioned the 49 over under again in Buffalo. And what he adds with his legs is always provides a very strong floor ceiling combo. So I think that Josh Allen's a really good spend this week if you can get there. I have no issues with it whatsoever. Dak on the other side, also not bad. Now he's priced up to $8K. I'd almost always rather find that $200 to get to Josh Allen in Buffalo. If this game was in Dallas, I'd feel differently. But now he's priced all the way up like the MVP favorite that he probably is. And I get it. And, he's had a massive 30-point DraftKings games. He's 3 of the last 6, and then he's had the 28 and the 41. So massive games for Dak. But, 3 straight games at home. Now going back on the road into cold Buffalo. This is not the easiest spot. We'll keep an eye on weather there. I don't know what they're looking for in mid-December Buffalo this weekend, but I'd probably prefer Josh Allen if I'm getting there. Super disappointing game for Tua and the Dolphins. Last night on the Monday night doubleheader, really embarrassing loss to the Titans when they were up by 14 with 3 minutes left or whatever it was. Obviously, Tyreek Hill will be something to watch this week with the ankle. Was being used sparingly in the second half there, only on passing downs, kind of more as a decoy, in my opinion. It's really hard to project anything out for this Dolphins team without the best skill position player in the entire NFL in Tyreek Hill. And now he's still around 8K against the Jets defense, which is number 1 against all receivers. Certainly a tough pass defense. I'm not interested in Tua Tagovailoa this week. I really don't think I'd even consider going there personally. Mahomes also in a tough spot. Now this is pretty cheap for Mahomes, 7-8. But man, we just don't have ceiling games on Mahomes this season, right? We had that 37 against the Chargers. That's the only 30-point game that we've had all year. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 20-point games, and 3 of them came in weeks 1, 2, and 3. So if you look since then, we've had 1 or 2, and everything's been in the teens. Now you're going into New England. Again, the Patriots, terrible team overall, but still a very stout, solid, stingy defense. This is not a good Patrick Mahomes spot, in my opinion. I'm sure they're going to be pissed off after how everything ended. They were whining like little babies about the offside penalty to end the game against Buffalo, but this is still not a great spot for Mahomes. Now, if I was full-on MMEing GPP bro style, I'd probably put him in my player pool, but that's about the extent of my interest in Patrick Mahomes. CJ Stroud, concussion protocol, I won't really speculate too much here, but tough spot on the road. Titans finding a groove. Plus, no Nico Collins, probably no Tank Dell. So, supporting cast really weak. He's coming off the concussion. I love CJ Stroud. I've loved the story. I think he should still be the clear rookie of the year. Don't know if this is the best spot. If you notice a theme here, your spend up options at quarterback all have caveats this week. All have potential spots that are tough, including Justin Fields, who is our last 7K quarterback. Still like Fields because I just love what he brings week in, week out. But again, this is in Cleveland Browns, a top 3 defense in the league. Tough spot for Fields. So you may have seen this thumbnail of this video and said, why is Brock Purdy the cover boy? And that is why Brock Purdy is the cover boy, because if you go from Fields, Stroud, Mahomes, Tua, Dak, Josh Allen, you could poke holes in every single one of those matchups. You know where you can poke holes? The 6K tier. Most of these guys are all great plays, including Brock Purdy, who really didn't do anything to hurt his MVP chances, in my opinion, in week 14. Another 370 yards, 2 touchdowns. I've been saying he needs to get like 304 every week to keep that MVP pace, but he's doing it for the most part. Obviously, the Niners team is just cruising. Debo's finding a groove. Ayuk's still putting up points. CMC, we'll get to him in a minute. But this is all on the backs of Brock Purdy, who should probably be over 7K at this point. Definitely has a higher floor ceiling combo than I ever would have imagined going into this season. And now he's, going into Arizona. This is a really nice spot. Put up 21 points at home against them in week 4, but they did win 35-16. Probably didn't have to do too much through the air in that game. I think the floor, though, is 20 points here. So the question is, how often does he get to 30? If all those quarterbacks above him in tough matchups fail, you might still be good either way. But if you don't want to play Purdy, you do have a ton of options right below him as well that I like this week, including the other side of that game in Kyler Murray. Kyler coming off a weird week 14 bye. It's been really encouraging to see how much he's been running since he's been back. Hopefully that bye gave him a chance to get his body even more right since he's returned from injury. At home against San Francisco, you think maybe not the easiest matchup, but the Niners have found themselves in back and forth games all season. Now, the Niners still have a great D, but Kyler's scrambling ability, he'll probably be less owned than Purdy. I would imagine. We'll see where ownership comes in. This is a really interesting piece at home in a game that has a high over-under. I like Kyler quite a bit. And then absolutely love Sam Howell, who's been just a fantasy, rock star in a lot of ways for what his price has been all year. If you look at this, 6 straight games over 20 points, including that 35-point game against Philly. And this is a pretty good spot against the Rams. Now, it's not as good of a spot for his opponent in Matthew Stafford, who I have not played Matthew Stafford once in DFS this year. That will change this weekend. Attacking Washington Commanders, if you're a DFS NBA player, attacking the Washington Commanders through the air is like attacking the Washington Wizards with centers on the other side. It is the nut matchup. That's what you want to do. So not only is Matthew Stafford finding a groove over the last 3 weeks, which with positive touchdown regression that was coming his way, that he is with 10 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, thrown the ball 33, 37, 41 times, put up 23, 23, 24 DraftKings points. So very consistent. You'll take that at 6K. I think in this particular matchup, you have a higher ceiling than that as well. So Matthew Stafford, healthy, cooking, and so is the Sean McVay Rams. It's impressive. They just don't really quit this team. So, 6K against the Commanders, I'm sure he's going to be in play for cash. Curious how owned he's going to be. We'll have to take a look. Jordan Love came crashing back down to earth last night. Credit to the Giants and the Giants defense in New York. Now he gets a really nice bounce back spot going back home. It is short rest, but going back home against a Tampa team that has been really gashed through the air much of this year. So you throw him right in that mix of those 6K guys that you're interested in. So really this tier here, Stafford, Love, Howell, Kyler, Purdy, this is the tier for quarterback this week. I'd imagine ownership is going to condense around this tier, which makes your Allen Prescott guys kind of interesting pay up to be contrarian plays. We'll see where that all lands. Guys going down from there, not really interested in Baker going into Green Bay. I don't have any faith in Derek Carr. Flacco at home against the Bears. I did play a couple Flacco teams last week. I think you could throw him in the mix. I'd rather find the 500 against Stafford. Levis, really impressive stuff in the second half last night, 320 yards and a touchdown. Pretty good matchup here at home against the Texans. If you wanted to go there, you can. I have to keep giving Desmond Ridder credit because he has been optimal twice this year and almost was for a third time this week if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson. So I guess he has a ceiling that I never really thought was there. From there, I don't think you're going to any of these other guys, right? Zach Wilson against the Dolphins, coming off his best game of the year. If the weather's super nice in Miami and you're 150ing, I guess it's really ugly. DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, and I don't think I'm going too many of those two guys, but I do think that mid-tier is going to be the place to attack this week. Let's go over to running back, and if you'll see a lot of green on the opponent fantasy ranks, according to DraftKings metrics here, and that means we have a lot of good matchups for the top tier of running back this week, starting with Christian McCaffrey. Certainly a very good play against the Cardinals. We mentioned that game against Arizona. That was the game. He had 51 DraftKings points. So if they dominate again on the ground, which is certainly possible, everyone played CMC last week. They loved that matchup against Seattle. Only came up with 19 points. I always talk about he's a walking 20 points just by suiting up. That is for sure his floor. You need a lot more than that at 9-3. This is a matchup he can give you that. I think everyone in cash is going to play Christian McCaffrey. I would imagine Christian McCaffrey is going to be quite owned. What constructions look like is going to be something we have to talk about throughout the week. When you're playing Christian McCaffrey, you can play Purdy McCaffrey for sure because of what he does in the air. So all things to consider here with Christian McCaffrey. Alvin Kamara was a little bit disappointing as well last week. Shocked that he only had 5 targets. Jamal Williams was definitely more involved than I thought he was going to be. He had 11 carries. I still like this spot at home against the Giants on short rest. Giants have given up some big games to running backs. Kieran Williams is awesome. Absolutely love this role. Again, 3 straight games or 3 of 4 games over 100 rushing yards and 3 of 4 games over 20 carries, plus adding 3 catches, 6 catches through the air. Since he's returned, he is in that elite Todd Gurley-esque, Christian McCaffrey-esque role. Now you're at home against the Commanders. I love Kieran Williams. I want to play a ton of Kieran Williams. No holes to poke in Kieran Williams. Again, you're spending up probably a running back this week. It's something to consider here. Saquon found the end zone twice last week. Did fumble to almost throw the game away for the Giants. But as Petey says, Tommy Cutlets comes through last night for my Giants for the game-winning drive. Saquon was really the catalyst of that offense in a lot of ways, though, and the role is going to be really, really good. This is not the best matchup against the Saints, but volume could win out here. So of all these guys above 7K, he's the one most likely to fall through the cracks too, so that makes it interesting. Achane Mostert, it was a Mostert game last night, found the end zone twice, was 4 yards away from the bonus. Achane really needs game script to go his way, I think, for those huge mega games when he just kind of feasts on those worn down defenses in second half of blowouts. That's kind of been his MO so far in his young rookie career. I like Achane. I think he's got a fascinating ceiling. I think our projections were straight up wrong last night. I think he always had a higher ceiling. I don't think he always had a higher base projection. And I think that's something that Adam, Cody, and I spoke a little bit about on the DFS show yesterday. And it's something to consider. Mostert always has probably higher touchdown equity for the goal line work, higher base work when the game is close. So it's all dependent on what you think can happen. Now, I think there's a good chance the Dolphins come back after that disappointing loss at home against a Jets team that's still led by Zach Wilson, and is, in a letdown spot coming off a win, and just step on the throats of their division rival. If that's the case, then you can definitely see an Achane game. But, again, not playing those guys together this week. I know we saw it once before where they were optimal in that 70-point game. That's a true outlier, in my opinion. Rashad White, also one of the best roles in all of fantasy. I'd been worried that, hey, maybe this guy's just kind of like a high teens player because he compiles his way to 80 to 100 rushing yards and has 4 to 6 catches, and that's it. But when you find an end zone and you get over 100 yards bonus, you are going to get over 20 DraftKings points, and that's what he did last week. They braced him up to 7K. You saw Saquon have some success against his Packers team last night. I think he's fine. I don't hate him. Derrick Henry also had 2 touchdowns last night. This is a pretty solid. We like December. Derrick Henry, obviously, at home against a Texans team that he's beaten up on throughout his whole career. The way you beat Houston is really through the air, but I think Derrick Henry for sure in this game could be it's probably underpriced there at 6.9 if I do say so myself. We'll see who's available for the Chiefs backs. I don't think Pacheco is going to play, but that's not a sure thing. So keep an eye there. Whoever does play, not a great matchup with the Patriots, but you could have some value there if it's the McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire tier again. Still, Bijan Robinson way too cheap. Now, it was a disappointing Bijan week, coming off games where he had 18 carries, 60 carries, 22 carries, 3 in a row. He still got to 15 touches because he had 5 catches, did find the end zone to kind of salvage his day. But, wasn't a smash Bijan spot. This is a smash Bijan spot against the Carolina Panthers. So Bijan might go absolutely nuke this week in Carolina. So keep an eye on that. Tony Pollard also just been, Dowdle was the guy that got in the end zone. Did have 7 catches. I think in this particular game script, because of his ability through the air, he will have plenty of work. So I like him in correlation when you're attacking those games and game stacks. Other than that, I have a hard time getting to Pollard these days. We don't know if Aaron Jones is going to be back. I think he's going to be back because it sounded like he was very close to playing last night. Still, I'd rather attack Tampa Bay through the air. I think you can include Aaron Jones in game stacks if he gets the full go-ahead in game stacks with Jordan Love. Actually, I think that's probably the best way to attack Aaron Jones this week. Breece Hall against Miami. He really has a floor with his receiving role right now, and I think that's something to consider when you're considering Breece Hall. James Cook, tough matchup with the Cowboys. If you want to include him in your Josh Allen stacks, I think that's fair, or your Bills Cowboys correlation. We'll see if Brian Robinson's back for Washington. It sounds like he might be. Not the best matchup against the Rams, but he's been viable this year. See if Ramondre Stevenson is back. I don't think he's going to be, which does set up for Zeke, but they brought Zeke only $100 cheaper than Ramondre. You saw James Cook had some success against this Chiefs team, 5.8 yards a carry on the ground, another 5 for 83 through the air. So maybe this matchup's softening up for us a little bit. They're at home. Still in the large field GPP type of play, though. James Conner, massive volume, had the big 25 for 105 on the game before the bye. Don't like this spot. If I'm attacking Arizona, I want it to be through the air. Chuba Hubbard also had a big role, right? 23 rushes and 25 rushes the last 2 weeks. That's what they want to do. They want to establish it against Atlanta. Not the best game ever, but something you can consider. Jerome Ford probably still makes my player pool if he is playing. Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce are kind of canceling each other out right now. Plus, I'd rather attack Tennessee through the air. AJ Dillon, I'm really only interested in if Aaron Jones is out in a tough matchup with Tampa Bay. Antonio Gibson, I'd be interested in if Brian Robinson's out, especially as a stack piece in through the air. If not, I don't think he really cracks your pool. And then from there, you got a bunch of punts. Tyjae Spears, the Bears guys. We'll see what's happening with the Chiefs guys. But this definitely seems like a mid-tier quarterback week and a pay-up running back week. So let's talk about receivers, right? If all these running backs, you're paying up for running back, maybe you can get some of these expensive receivers, but it's no sure thing. Tyreek Hill, if there's ever a week to fade Tyreek, if he's cleared, it's this week, right? Coming off the ankle, I wouldn't be surprised if they sit him, but coming off the ankle, and you're facing a Jets team that is number one against opposing wide receivers. Now, Tyreek Hill can take the top off from any defense. Any week, he is the highest ceiling receiver on the slate. This is not, again, short week, got hurt last night. I know he came back in sparingly in the second half. They were trying to win the game. I don't know if he plays this week, and if he does play this week, I'd be terrified to use him. It's a large field tournament play only. Can't believe I'm saying that about Tyreek Hill, but that's kind of where we're at for this particular matchup. Brutal best ball playoff schedule for Tyreek as well this week against the Jets. I know he's got some tough other games coming up too. CD, I have no issues just continuing to attack CD, especially in correlation. One of the best roles in the league. Not the best matchup in Buffalo, but he should still damage. Diggs, also tough matchup with some of the Dallas guys, but the role, and this was a disappointing matchup game for me. I know it was a tough matchup against the Chiefs, but I thought if that game went up, it didn't. It went under. So, that there's something to always consider if you think the game's going to go under. But he had 11 targets, only was able to go 4 for 24 on those 11 targets. He's due. He's absolutely due. If you want to attack this game, I think there's a good chance Diggs gets something going here. So keep that in mind. It was good to see Cooper Kupp come back to life this week. In the last 2 weeks, 18 combined targets, but particularly the 8 for 115 and a touchdown was a big Cooper Kupp game. So much so that they bring him back up to 7-8 after he went down to 7-4. This is a great matchup for Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua against Washington. Again, these Rams double stacks are so in play this week. I don't usually love playing two receivers over 7K on the same team. I think they eat into each other's ceiling. I know that is kind of goes against industry thinking with traditional double stacks, but it's not my style of playing. I like to go like a receiver and a running back, a receiver and a tight end. But when an offense is so condensed, like this Rams one is, you can absolutely play Puka and Cooper Kupp together. So this is a really interesting week to do that, or just get one-off pieces of one of them, however you want to do it. They're both great plays. All the San Francisco guys are in good spots too. Now they aggressively priced Debo up, $900 more after back-to-back 30-point games. That's huge scores, right? 37 points, 38 points. It's weird. 1 week, in week 13, it comes on limited volume, super high efficiency. This week, it came on high volume, high efficiency, 7 for 150 and a touchdown through the air. Also got a rushing touchdown on the goal line. The role is excellent. We're starting to see 2 years ago Deebo Samuel again. If that's the case, he has the ability to break any slate at any time, and he should be priced up this side. Now, I'm curious if ownership comes down here. Like I mentioned, you probably wanted to pay up for running back. He is now, He is $500 more than Brandon Ayuk, who I still think is the more naturally true wide receiver one. So if the game kind of gets into more of a drop back style for whatever reason, Purdy wants to be in the pocket a little bit more, I think Ayuk can absolutely dominate. If you go look back at week 4, Ayuk had a 6 for 148 here. Debo had a 0. He had a goose egg. So the whole field might want Debo after these 2 weeks. I just think keep it in mind. It's something to consider here. Evans' first bad game in a long time last week, only 1 for 8 through the air. Did have 6 targets. Facing Green Bay team that's not the best matchup in Green Bay. I think that's just Waddle, same thing as Tyreek. You can feel a little bit better about Waddle because injury stuff, and Tyreek would get more defensive attention if he's playing. But I don't think you can really go to either of those guys in small field or cash lineups. Those are large field GPP punts only. Olave gets a pretty good matchup here against the Giants in the Dome. Again, still waiting on the huge Olave game. We haven't had it. It's been like capped out at 21 points, but you can see it coming at some point still. Wouldn't completely rule it out. If Nico plays somehow, I'd be interested in playing him. I just don't know if he's going to play. DJ Moore is still underpriced here. He should be over 7K for sure. This is 3 straight games between 22 and 27 DraftKings points. The role is excellent with Justin Fields. He's having a great season. Shout out to Silva, who was on DJ Moore early this year. I know a lot of people were concerned about him going from Carolina to Chicago. It ended up being a better situation. Carolina's a mess. Chicago, at least with Fields, is serviceable, and DJ Moore is benefiting from that. Thielen, again, kind of been stuck right at 6-3 now. He's not had a big game since that week 6 game against Atlanta at home. Just mid-play to me at best. D-Hop, big game last night, him and Levis seem to really be finding a groove here. 7 for 124 and a touchdown, 12 targets in each of the last 2 games. Very good matchup against Houston. I have no issues. I think DeAndre Hopkins is actually a pretty good play this week at 6-2. Rashee Rice also a 6-1. They bring him up from 5-4. Did have his 7 for 72 and a touchdown. Very clearly the wide receiver one at this point, if you don't count Travis Kelce, that is, in this Chiefs offense. But it's a tough matchup in New England for Rashee Rice. I don't mind attacking it a little bit. Amari Cooper had 14 targets. Big game for Amari Cooper. So he's finding something for Joe Flacco. Didn't get it done. Was only 7 for 77, but you love that volume for sure. Game against Chicago is okay. Don't mind it. Godwin, another 11 targets and just still can't get it done. I just don't know if there's a ceiling there right now with Baker and Godwin. There's a ceiling with Evans. I don't know if there's a ceiling with Godwin. Wouldn't completely rule it out in tournaments, but this is not the best matchup either. Garrett Wilson, just saw what DeAndre Hopkins did to this team. I think he could throw in Miami a little bit. Hopefully weather's nice. He's way too cheap, I think, ultimately for what his ceiling is. Now, he had 9 for 108 on 14 targets. Did not find the end zone. Could have been a bigger game. Still had 23 DraftKings points. 5.8 for Garrett Wilson's awesome. You could definitely take a shot at any of those Washington bringbacks for the Rams, whether it's McLaurin, Dotson, or Samuel. I think Curtis Samuel is still my favorite. Gabe Davis, is your boomer bust clearly. Every other week gets a goose egg type play, but he's due, right? He had a goose egg last week. That means he's due. This week is Gabe Davis. Drake London coming off his best game of the year, 30 DraftKings points. That was kind of predictable in that matchup. This is not as easy of a matchup in Carolina for sure against through the air. Carolina's pretty good against receivers. You can get into the Packers guys, assuming Christian Watson is going to be out again. I think Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, good plays. Prefer Reed with the way he's being used. He had 4 carries for 38 yards and a rushing touchdown again last night. Had 10 targets. This is a really good player right now, way underpriced. I'm not going to get into anyone else below 5K. He's way underpriced. I can't believe he's under 5K. He'll make cheap wide receiver volume, which check out on establishthedrun.com. We will be up on Thursday afternoon. And ending with tight end, bad matchups across. Also, when 1 week is a huge tight end week, I have a hard time thinking it's going to be tight end week again. Double tight end was optimal last week. It seemed like every touchdown that scored, especially in the early hours, was from a tight end. Now you get tight end with Kelsey and Kittle on the slate, but tough matchups across the board, right? Kelsey in New England, not the easiest matchup. Kittle against Arizona, I would be interested in attacking for sure because I want to get exposure to all the different San Francisco made cogs. We'll see if Taysom Hill plays, but he's fully priced. Kincaid with Knox back definitely came crashing back down to earth, but did still have 8 targets. That was encouraging to see. I think you can include him in all your correlation stuff. Trey McBride's role is just so freaking good. Coming off the bye, I love him as a bring back in San Francisco stuff. I think that's great if you can afford it. I think it's really good. We'll see if Dalton Schultz plays. Jake Ferguson, I wanted some correlations pieces. And Njoku, huge game last week, found the end zone twice. Game against the Bears this week, pretty good. Flacco's finding chemistry with all these guys. Njoku, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, all of them more interesting with Joe Flacco, no doubt. Tough matchup for Cole Kmet in Cleveland. Darren Waller is expected to be back for week 15, and he's only 4,400. If you want to try to get out a week early, keep an eye on reports. If he's expected to have a full role, Tommy DeVito is showing he can at least sustain this offense. The Giants are showing a willingness to throw. 4,400 for Darren Waller is way too cheap, and he's expected to be back. That's something to consider. Logan Thomas also going to be a play for you. Kyle Pitts did find the end zone again on tight end week, but I still don't think there's a ceiling there right now for Kyle Pitts. You got a ton of other guys. Again, it's the Tyler Conklin's of the world. We'll see if Brevin Jordan's a play again. Tyler Kraft certainly at 3K. Chigakonko under 3K. All those guys in play for you. Okay, interesting slate here for sure. As I mentioned, that mid-tier quarterback, high up wide receivers, running backs, wide receivers. You're probably going to be looking in like the mid to high tier. And then tight ends, get in where you fit in because it's ugly per usual. All right, thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys all year checking out this show. We'll be back for a week 16 version, but more importantly, good luck in everything you have going on this weekend. I know this is the fun weeks. This is the money-making weeks here now that we've reached week 15. I hope you all are very, very successful. If you're looking for any content around the 3-game Saturday slate, we will have full projections for that on establishthedrun.com. We'll have some other content for my leverage column this week. If you are a subscriber to establishthedrun.com, I will be writing about the 3-game contest and 3-game strategy in general. I know I said I was going to be writing about a different topic last week. I'm going to push that topic to week 16 because I think it's important to be discussing these 3-game slates now that we're going to be having some of them on Saturday, particularly starting with this weekend. So check out everything we have going on at establishthedrun.com/subscribe for NBA. If you're interested in that, we might have some discounts coming up for holiday season. We are still continuing to crush now that NBA is back in full swing after the in-season tournaments and everything else coming for you in your ears and on your screens for you to read, listen, and enjoy at establishthedrun.com coming this week. Happy Hanukkah to everyone out there that is celebrating like myself, and I wish you all the best of luck in week 15. Thanks, everybody. Take care.